This is a Film Stories original podcast. We made this.
Hi, I'm Frank Spotnitz. I produce The X-Files, and you're listening to The X-Cast.
Welcome to the Season 8 premiere of The X-Cast. The truth is in here. I'm your host, Sarah Blair, and I've got my special agents in charge back with me, Kurt North and Carl Sweeney. Hey, fellas, how's it going?
Hey.
Hi, Sarah.
Welcome back.
Good to be back. Yeah, it's good to be back, isn't it? Out of our podcasting hibernation. You know, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter, and we're back in action.
I don't think I've been hibernating, to be honest, Carl. You may well been have a nice long sleep. I've been wide awake.
I've been in my podcasting cave, but recently broke out. So, yeah, good times. So it feels good to be back for Season 8. What do you think? Are you excited for this season?
I am. Yeah, definitely. I think I really like Season 8. I think it's always fun to hang out with you, pair of reprobates, you know. We've got a nice mix, haven't we? We've got returning guests. Maybe we've got one or two new guests on episodes for the first time this year. I think there's lots to talk about with Season 8. I think that's the main thing. And I think that there's going to be lots of debate. I think people are going to be arguing all sorts of different perspectives. I think that's always the case on the X-Cast. But I think Season 8 in particular, opinion is all over the map. So I'm very excited. Kurt, how about you?
I'm very, very excited. As people may know, Season 8 is one of my favourite seasons. So the fact that we get to talk about it is great, and I get to rewatch it as well. So at the moment, I've actually got up to Via Negativa, which means I've got Sure Kill and Salvage next to go. But that's for another day.
But can I just clarify? You started that rewatch like yesterday, didn't you?
I did start that, yes,
fairly recently.
Yeah, I literally started it yesterday. Well, no, I watched Within for our recording today, but a few days ago. But I caught up without up to Via Negativa yesterday, and then that was just circumstances. Things happened, and I all of a sudden had time available. So it was we had plans, and that changed in a second. So it was like I was stuck on my own. I watched Within and just continued like leaving it on Disney Plus. Just left it running. So yeah, but I'm really looking forward. As you say, a lot of people have a lot of different thoughts on Season 8. So I think it's going to be fascinating. I know Katie Doe tweeted me last night. Because I think she was on a recording with you
with me.
Yeah. So she says she thinks that I'll enjoy her ideas on Season 8. So I'm looking forward to that podcast when that comes out as well. So that'd be good.
Well, yeah, not to spoil it for you, but yeah, we had 4 of us on that recording, and some of the seasons we were pretty clustered around. You know, so opinion on Season 9, for example, was fairly uniform. I won't say whether that was positive or negative, but you can hazard a guess. With Season 8. It was very different. People were split on it. So, like I say, I think it's a good talking point, Season 8, isn't it, Sarah?
It absolutely is. I'm looking forward to hearing what everybody has to say about it as well. I know that it's kind of one of those seasons. It's almost like Season 6 where you either love it or you hate it. I feel like most people either love Season 6 or do not love Season 6. So
I love Season 6. Where do you stand on Season 8, Sarah? Where do you stand?
I'm willing to be convinced of the opinions that everybody thinks Season 8 is so wonderful. I'm going in with an open Mulder mind, I guess. We'll see how it goes. Ask me again at the end. We'll see. It'll be an interesting journey for sure.
5 minutes into the first recording of the season, I think Sarah's already speaking through gritted teeth. Is that just me? No, I think, Sarah, by the time you've rewatched Roadrunners, I think this is the time. It's going to click for you this time.
I don't know,
feel
Carl.
like we've had discussed this. It's been a few years now we've been talking about it.
I showed her a little bit on our Marco Polo yesterday. She didn't look amused.
Well, I think that was just a facade. I think.
Yeah, just we'll see. I'm not making any promises. I do love Patience. Patience is a great scary episode. I liked that one a lot. So that one was scary enough for me to not want to watch it very often, which is, But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more of season 8. It's not one that I rewatch. So, and you know me about rewatchability. My theories on that. So I think it'll be interesting to go through and kind of see these again for the first time. So, I've seen most of them, but not all of them. And yeah, I'm looking forward to revisiting this.
Lots of Skinner. Lots of Skinner to look forward to.
So much Skinner. I'm so excited about Skinner. He's great. He's great, especially in this episode. And yeah, so let's talk about Within and dig into the Skinner stuff, at least, right?
That's where we're starting.
That's all we're going to talk about.
We can do a few minutes on Skinner and then call it a day. There's nothing else to talk about here.
Just talk about the Skinner scenes, and that's it. This episode is Within, like we just talked about, and it originally aired on the 5th of November in the year 2000. And this is the season premiere of season 8. It was written by Chris Carter with Stephen Maida and Jeffrey Bell listed as story editors. And it was directed by Kim Manners, the late great Kim Manners. In this episode, new Deputy Director Kirsch has Agent John Doggett investigate the missing Mulder case. Doggett's skeptical treatment of Mulder's disappearance puts a thorn in Scully and Skinner's sides. And there's a lot to unpack here. But before we get into all of that, let's talk about our scores for this episode. Kurt, what would you rate this episode out of 10?
Ooh, I'm going to go for a solid 8. I think the way it has to retool and operate is obviously, it guides it. It kind of does a really good job of wiping the slate clean in a lot of ways. I think I'll use that terminology quite a bit in this episode. There is some issues that I have, and I think there's always been language issues that I've had with the X-Files, as many people do. There's just certain things that start to creep in from here on in, where some of the writing kind of gets a bit too on the nose, and no doubt we'll talk about that at some point. So there's issues like that, which I feel is a bit there. But there's a lot to love and there's a lot to debate. So I think, as I say, for a starting off point, I mean, I walked into this episode listening to it and watching it, and I got quite giddy. But that was more because we're doing season 8 more than anything else. But it was really enjoyable to get into this episode and watch it a couple of times. So yeah, solid episode, nice retooling, very interesting, and I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Well, no, I agree with Kurt. I think I'm also going to go for an 8 out of 10 because I think this is a very good start to the season, to be honest. I think what I appreciate is that in large part, it's a bit of a mood piece, isn't it? And mainly concerned with Scully. Not that much really happens in this episode until fairly late on, to be honest. But I think in those early stages, it gets into these character dynamics in quite an interesting way. I actually think the introduction of Doggett here is very clever, the way it's done, in several ways. And and it handles the enforced absence or the minimal presence, really, of Mulder well as well. I do think that some of the plotting here is a bit of a stretch. I think that's what holds it back for me from being a really, truly great episode, from being like a 9 or a 10. And I think I'm wondering if I'm thinking of slightly different things to what Kurt's saying, because I'm not sure I have an issue with the terminology as such. Maybe I will after Kurt's explained it. But some of the plotting I think is a bit iffy. But honestly, I think given the circumstances, I don't think we could have asked for much more from this first episode, season 8. I think it feels like a properly different beast now, the series. I think we'll talk about that. I think it had to be. I think they were essentially forced to shake things up. But I think the fact that they had this change imposed upon them, I think they do really well to sort of redirect or reorient the series here. So yeah, I like it. 8 out of 10. I'm a fan.
Awesome. I think I have to go with like a 7.5. Sorry, guys, but okay. I
Still
do.
A good score. Still a good score.
Yeah, it is. I do appreciate it on an artistic level and a critical level. And I like seeing how they've put things together and how they've come at this season without Mulder. So, they've got a lot on their plate to deal with in the beginning of the season. I think they did a great job of handling it as it is. So I think it's one of the better episodes. I can appreciate it for what it is. Can anyone guess what the IMDb score is?
Ooh, I haven't looked.
8.6. I'm guessing that.
I'm going to go a little bit lower. I'm not sure. I really don't know. I think maybe 8.3.
Carl. Yes, it's an 8.3.
8.3.
Honestly, I didn't look. Honestly, I didn't look.
Yeah.
I'm just very intuitive. With,
you just know the audience.
You've just been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like my reputation is being traduced here.
How many people voted? I'm interested to know that.
Let me check here.
I don't know because I haven't looked.
2,620. Yeah.
Do you know how to look at the demographics, Sarah?
Yes. Let me check. So, 685 people gave it a 10. 599 people gave it a 9. 782 people gave it an 8. And it goes down from there. 318 gave it a 7. 5 people gave it a 3, and 5 gave it a 2, and 47 people gave it a 1. The top 1,000 voters gave it an 8.2. So, yeah, interesting to look into. All right, pretty even, pretty on par with what we were saying. So, how about we jump in and get season 8 going? Let's talk about the episode.
Let's fire up that tooth drill.
Let's do it.
All right, so we left Requiem season 7 behind with kind of a big revelation and Scully's announcement. Yeah. So this is where we pick up, and we get an impression of something. We get an impression of, a heartbeat, and we think it's an ultrasound probably, but it turns into something else. What do you guys think about this this intro? Carl, You're nodding your head.
I'm nodding my head because I like it. I think it's a very moody teaser. Like you say, it's that combination of, how would you describe it? Is uterine the right word? Uterine imagery with the alien stuff that comes later, and we see Mulder. So I think it's very effective. I think it signals this is going to be a more sparse narrative. It's going to be geared around Scully and her pregnancy. Of course, she wakes up at the end of the teaser. And not just that it's going to be geared around that, it's also going to be geared around the fact that Mulder is absent. So I think it probably is one of the shortest ever teasers, isn't it? It's probably only like a minute long, but I think it communicates quite a bit in a short space of time in a fairly evocative way, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, like season 6, I think this kind of demonstrates like a rebirth for the show as well. That it kind of gives you, it's basically saying, this is a new section, new chapter of the show. The X-Files are being reborn in a different way, really. So I like the kind of thematic start to it as well.
Yeah. And that bleeds over into the opening credits as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because they've been kind of retooled for this season with new badge photos, and Robert Patrick is on there, of course, but also like the image of Mulder falling. So that's kind of interesting too. You get a clear sense, don't you, that this show has a new direction.
What do you think, having the opening credits at this point, bearing in mind that they do, for me, it doesn't make any difference. The scene on the benches later with Scully, the fact it's not really a surprise, so they're not playing the whole Doggett thing. It's a surprise to Scully, but not to the audience. And there would have probably been, can't quite remember now, but there would probably have been quite a few press shots with Doggett already. So there was no way around it, but it's interesting that they actually do it that way.
Yeah, do you guys you guys did not see it when it aired, did you?
Yeah.
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember not being happy that they had changed the credits because I was already upset that David Duchovny was, not going to be on as much. And so I do remember watching. I was like, they even changed the credits. I was devastated. I was just very angsty about that.
See, I was like, they've got the T-1000 on the credits. That's what I was like. I was like, yes, we've got Terminator coming.
I don't mind it. I think the season 9 credits, which we'll obviously talk about eventually, are worse. I don't mind these season 8 credits though. Again, because I think it speaks to the purpose of what the season is driving towards quite well. That's a good point, Kurt, about Robert Patrick being on there. I mean, I suppose at the time there would have been a lot of publicity, wouldn't there, around the fact that Duchovny's here in a more limited capacity as a new actor. So I'm sure there were people watching it for the first time who didn't know that, and it kind of maybe affects the way they then see the introduction scene of Doggett later. But I suppose most people probably would have had some level of awareness about it already, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, I can see people watching it now and skipping the credits and not even realising there is new credits. Yep. So, so it'll actually work probably better now than it would have done in 2000.
That's a good point.
I never skip the intro on anything, I've got to say. I'm a bit old school.
On anything?
I always like to watch on anything. I always sit to the end of the credits as well. I'm really sad. At the end of the episode, like, I'll watch all of that.
Yeah, on Marvel, I just go, is there a post-credit scene? No, walk out.
Google that.
I don't know why people wait. They just use the phone and go, is there any post-credit scenes on Spider-Man? Yeah. Yes, right, I'll stay here. So
I was just talking with my husband about how much time in our lives is taken up by watching the intros to shows. Just the intros. Like the 2-minute intro over a, 8, 10, 20 episode show. That adds up. Like how much time in our lives.
Think of how much extra Skinner you could have had in those 2 minutes.
I know, right? Oh,
but think about all the times,
guys.
If you skip it and you miss the tagline changing or...
never for the X-Files. Never for the X-Files.
But
just,
fair enough.
Other shows, like Game of Thrones. Yeah. I'm not going to watch that intro every time, even though they do change that to be significant. But I didn't understand. I didn't read the books. Sorry, guys. But yeah, so...
It's all right. I didn't read the books. I watched the TV show, so...
Yeah. I mean, But back to X-Files. So let's just talk about Doggett, okay? So, new character. This isn't the first time over the course of the show that we've had new characters introduced. I mean, we've had Kirsch come on board. We've had, but this is a significant addition to the show. I mean...
Yeah. I think they're in a really interesting place because it goes to what Carl was alluding to before. With introducing Doggett, they've got a really interesting dilemma in that you've introduced people like Krychek in the past and various different people. You're not sure of their allegiances, and the way they've got to write Doggett is this straight up like New York cop who and quickly get around to the fact he's down the line, but also there's elements in this episode where they kind of do portray a little bit of I'm not quite sure about him, but they don't push it too far. So I think the line that they draw for Doggett on this episode is really good for that reason. And I think over the next few episodes it works quite well as well. That they do have this really close tightrope that they've got to walk with Doggett, because you're going to have the audience, and we'll get to the benches. I'm sure as everyone says, it's like a fan throwing water on his face kind of thing. But they've got to get people around on board. So it's really interesting how they have to walk that line with him compared to previous characters.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it's very clever because Chris Carter knows, undoubtedly he knows that there's going to be a lot of skepticism about Doggett, a lot of hostility about him from lots of fans. So I think having him immediately be a bit at odds with Scully works really well in that respect. It doesn't shy away from the fact that there's going to be a bit of needle here, I think that's much better than it would have been to have him immediately get on well with Scully, immediately be presented as an ally. So I think the fact that he leans into that with that great scene where she throws the water in his face is a really shrewd move. I also think it's set up really nicely because at that point in the episode, like you say, we probably know Robert Patrick's joined the show. If we didn't know it before we sat down to watch this episode, we saw him in the credits. So you get that minute or two where we actually know a bit more than Scully does, which I think really adds to that scene as well. So yeah, no, I think they handle the introduction here very nicely, to be honest.
How do you feel about the fact that, like you said before, we had Krychek come on board? I remember when Krychek showed up, we were kind of mad about it, right? We're like, who's this new guy coming in for Scully? Like, that's not cool. And same sentiment here. We're like, we don't want a new partner for anybody. This is Mulder and Scully, Team Mulder and Scully forever. But how do you feel about the choice that they would bring in someone who's already somewhat well known as an actor instead of, like, no, we didn't know Nick Lee when he came on. He was a surprise. So what do you think about the choice to bring someone who everyone was like, the Terminator? Do we see him as the Terminator right now? Or like, like...
I mean, a lot of people obviously jump to that as the first reference point, don't they? And of course, there's an episode coming up later in the season where there's kind of an in joke about that. But I think it's good casting because he is something of a known quantity, and from other things as well. Like I think the film Copland, I think he has a role in. And, just various things where you've seen him over the years.
He was but he's strangely enough, I was for some reason flicking over the TV channel yesterday, and I turned it over right at the moment when he was on screen in Die Hard 2.
Yeah, so it's that kind of thing, isn't it? Where he's like, what I mean is he's well known and he's got the Terminator role, which is obviously a big thing, but he's not that famous that it's distracting or it doesn't really feel like stunt casting, and he's a good enough actor to really make it work as well. Is the thing, I think. Do you go with that, Kurt?
Yeah. I think people will have allusions to him being a bit Frank Black. He's definitely more of that mode, but he's not like Frank Black. And what I noticed actually watching within and without this time was there were moments where Doggett's arms were quite down by his side, which is a Chris Carterism of like, he needs someone to be stoic and just kind of like just on the level. And I think that Patrick Stewart, who the hell is Patrick Stewart?
That would have been very different.
That would have been very different casting. Robert Patrick does a really good job of that, of just being that that just, as you say, the Copland kind of thing, the grounded, level-headed character that he's playing. It's not bells and whistles. It's really kind of stoic, and I think it works well. And as you say, having an actor like that who can portray that well works really well. And I think for the casting to work and for the story to work, if you look at like Krychek was brought in to help Mulder as we saw it. So as we saw Krychek coming in. He's just you've been given this assignment, Krychek's going to help you kind of thing. This is very different, that in that Doggett's actual mission never changes. It's always the manhunt for Mulder. And at the end of Without, it's still, I will find Mulder. So the fact that the fans have to get on board because he's going to be the real pushing story element to try and find Mulder. So I like that they actually pursue that and keep that as a mission statement for Doggett.
But also, just to think about the Krychek comparison, so just in the sense that Krychek is introduced and becomes a great character. But in more recent seasons, we've had characters introduced who've never really taken off in that way, Marita Covarrubias or Spender or Foley, who are fine. They've got their fans, just the one fan in the case of Foley, in Kurt, essentially. No, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, even Kurt, you would say, like, they don't make the most of Foley, for example. I think people probably feel the same way about Spender. So it's an interesting task because they've got to try and really make this character work at a time when the new characters they've been introducing haven't always been that successful. And I think it's to their credit that in season 8 in particular, I think Doggett works really well for me.
I think they did a good job with the position that they were in, as far as Doggett goes. And like you said, Carl, they set things up really well and kind of, as an audience, we're right there with Scully. We just want to throw that water in his face.
Well, I think that's a good point, Sarah, about being right there with Scully, because I think that's what a lot of this episode is doing, isn't it? And I think most notably in the fact that we get Scully's theme, which is used several times. and we get those long, extended, like slow-mo scenes of her in her apartment or walking down the corridor or whatever it may be.
Sorry.
So I think you've hit on something important there, that she really, the episode really does put you with Scully, doesn't it? Especially in the early run-in, especially in the early stages.
Well, I think that's a good segue. We can talk about Scully because she's the central role here. Season 8, we have to think about what is Scully minus Mulder. She's obviously her own person. She's autonomous, and she made it clear that she has chosen to be with Mulder and join him on this crusade of his. She made that choice a long time ago and made that clear. So now that he's gone, we have to re-examine her role in the show and her role as a character and all of that. So I think it's interesting to talk about that and see, we all know, we've seen the season, but at this point, at the beginning of all of this, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think like we've said on, say, the pilot, for example, that Scully is our way into the universe of the X-Files. And it's the same job here, is that, as Carl mentioned before, the amount of time they take in the opening scene of having the really slow panning shot and Scully's theme being quite ethereal. There's no really metering in the music. There's no beats to it. It's literally all chordal and, very loosely structured. That it gives the audience time to grieve as well, because they obviously know that, Mulder's not going to be there anymore when you do see that. And I do like some of the callbacks as well with it. And, when we see the water just before she's sick at one point, where the water's dripping, which refers back to All Things. So I think having this time to having this slow moving plot for the first episode really works, because it gives us that insight to Scully's feelings, but it also gives you the audience as well. So I think it works really well to connect those two together.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think the fact that the plot takes a while to kind of unfurl means that we get the chance to really realise that, look, Scully is tired, she feels sick. It gives us the time to think about the end of Requiem, I think. We get to see things like her calling her mother, and, all these things work well, I think, to closely align us with her perspective. Like when she looks out of the apartment, sees the man across the street, the camera is sort of where Scully would be. We're really sharing her point of view.
That looks like John Doggett, but it isn't. I always think
it looks like him, doesn't it? Yeah, I don't know.
Obviously isn't, because she's not saying like he's on the phone and Doggett's down there, but it looks like it's Robert Patrick looking up at that window.
Yeah. I thought the same thing. It kind of does look like him. So I do appreciate that she's going through all this stuff, and we do get to see that from her, like the staring into the mirror and the calling her mom is very, like, I've been pregnant before, and those are the things that I did. Like, I can't speak for everyone's experience, but it is a strange and unusual feeling to know that, like, you're making another human, and it takes some getting used to. It's shocking at first to find out. It's a weird, unusual feeling. So yeah. I can understand her just, staring and looking at herself and like, do you look different now that you are two people, like making this other entity, and calling her mom and just needing her mom at that point. And then the idea that in that very vulnerable moment that she's having, where she's asking for help, because Scully, she doesn't ask for help often, and she's so strong when she does show that vulnerable side of herself. She's getting betrayed by this, knowing that she's being listened to and observed, and her life is what it is. And it's like that harsh reminder of that she is this FBI agent on this, crusade, and shady people are intruding into her life. It's a really good scene. I like that scene a lot.
And also in terms of, being aligned with Scully's perspective and things like that, I think what's also relevant is the fact that whenever we see Mulder on the ship, you can read those scenes as being projections of Scully's imagination, can't you? But it's not entirely clear what's going on. So the fact that, we see her wake up or we see her fall asleep and then we go to a scene with Mulder. I don't know. Do you guys read it that way? Do you see it as being, this is what Scully's kind of fearing?
Well, that was going to be my question post season 8, actually, because you see what happens in 10 and 11, and it's whether or not there is that connection. Does Scully actually receive those signals, or is it just a good editing technique? And it's a really interesting question, which I don't have an answer for, but I just find it fascinating that they use times throughout this episode of when she wakes up constantly that you see that reflection of where Mulder is. So, as you say, in the imagination, but we know by the end of Without, it's definitely not her imagination. It's actually happening. Is it just a clever cut, or is there something more supernatural involved?
Yeah.
Yeah. That actually never occurred to me before. I never thought that. I just assumed that they were, cutting to the real Mulder, and that's what was happening. But I like that. I like that point of view. I think it's definitely something to think about. So I
mean, William is involved at this point.
Yeah, he's there.
But also those scenes with Mulder on the ship. I mean, a couple of thoughts. One is that can't have been a pleasant filming day for David.
That's almost like we've talked on the Shipwrecked and Comatose podcast that I do about certain things in certain seasons being put in there. Like there's one where the main character gets to kiss a really gorgeous girl, but then they stick like this horrible monster with KY jelly all over, and you have to kiss that as well. And it's like, David Duchovny's going now. Shall we just put him in the worst position ever? And just
That's what I always think too. Like, wow, they really are just going all out there.
Screw you, we're putting you in there.
I suppose what it does is it really heightens our apprehension about Mulder, doesn't it? Because, you could have had it. It's not like something like Close Encounters of the Third Kind where it's all serene or whatever. This is genuinely a fearful situation for him to be in. So I think it works in that level, doesn't it?
And plus, I think for me, it works, again, with wiping the slate clean, that Requiem goes about talking about the fact they've got a chance to rebuild the mythology and things like that in Cigarette Smoking Man and sending Krychek and doing all that. But then you've got this, which is, like, if you think about it from the wider concept of the mythology, that they are trying to get rid of everything and start again effectively. And this is the beginning of the Super Soldier program. That it is kind of like you do kind of have this retooling and not retconning, but kind of retooling of the mythology in some ways. And as you say, adding the actual concern for Mulder as well, knowing that we're not going to see him for a while, and what's happening to him during this time, is quite horrific. And season 8 is going to do this right through the whole season of body horror. So the fact that they've got this already a dark start, including the mythology, is really interesting.
Yeah, Kurt, I was going to ask you about the mythology because, I am not super clear on all of, like, how did we get here?
I'm not the expert, by the way. I am not the expert.
Well, you know more than I do.
Go to eat the corn, know a lot of stuff. So go on, carry on. What was the question?
How do we get here? Like, how far back do you want to go? Do you want to go back to Antarctica?
Okay, so Scully's abduction, when she was abducted, we got very different visual images. And obviously they were doing different things, but it was implied that it was humans.
Yes.
Doing this.
Scully's abduction was humans and Mulder's abduction is aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that I just feel like that's
in the simplest form.
Okay. That's good. But,
so there isn't a mythology anymore because all the bets are off. If you remember Mulder saying in 2001 Son, all bets are off, and the aliens are going their own separate way now. They don't have a mythology, but part of their new mythology is actually infiltrating the government rather than actually using the government in collaboration. That's the basic new mythology moving forward.
But this is where I struggle with it a little bit, and maybe this is what I was talking about earlier with the plotting. Is like, when you get those scenes with Skinner and the lone gunman, and they're talking about tracking all this UFO activity, to try and work out where Mulder's gonna be and all of that. Does it not just seem a bit pie in the sky to you? Like, in the sense of like, what are they really gonna do? I know they sort of make something of it later, but it's a bit like, it's very different to the days, for example, with something like EBE when they were tracking a truck, and you can sort of get behind that. They got to find the truck and whatever. But here it's like they're trying to anticipate where the UFOs are going to be, and I just don't really buy it that much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, Doggett says it, doesn't he? Effectively, and I think it's in Without later on. He kind of says, "Well, what are you going to do? You're out here in the desert, like looking for Mulder. What are you going to see? A spaceship and go, hiya, can I have my friend back, please?" It is a bit like, oh, okay, if there was something, like the Antarctic thing in the film, then you can imagine there's something there that you've got a tool to actually use, to actually do something about it. But there's nothing here. It's more, and I suppose that's probably part of the case, though, isn't it? It's the hopelessness of actually being told to, the fact that it is hopeless what they're doing, but she's going to go as far as she can to actually try and do something, or at least be there.
I can see that. But like when Scully makes the leap to, well, it must be about Gibson Praise. It's like, I don't know.
That was a very Mulder leap, wasn't it?
It was.
I felt like,
I just find it a bit,
Well, it was in that cooling tower. It's not that far away from the cooling tower, is it? So
Gibson Praise, who's been missing for like 2 years, and then they track him down to that school very quickly when they need to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all a bit
Yeah. Well, that moment, and as we go throughout season 8, that's one of Scully's character arcs where she is trying to think like Mulder and trying to step into Mulder's shoes and be more intuitive. And, here where she kind of makes that leap, she's like, wait, I know what's happening. It's Gibson Praise. Dun, dun, dun. It's
I think
kind
the only
of
thing
like
on that
moment.
is it's deducing facts more than anything else, isn't it? It's not a leap of
She puts it together, but
because this is a big alien mission. To actually wipe the slate clean, which it took them a while. It must have I can imagine the bounty hunters just sitting around that table before Mulder was on it and just going, so what can we do? So what about if we abduct them again and change them into us and then infiltrate the government? We'll do that. Let's do that. All right, okay, let's go and clear the slate clean. Oh, Gibson Praise, remember him? And then this little alien comes in and says, yeah, I was in a bottom water tank with Gibson Praise. He was in a nuclear plant in Arizona. All right, we'll go and get him then. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, they bring back Kirsch from season 6, and I think that works fairly well. I mean, even that's a bit of a stretch because they say, well, I've just been promoted, and it's just, I think that's a bit convenient, but I think it's nice to see him in the sense that he kind of petered out a bit, didn't he, in season 6? Like, he was this big boss man at the beginning of it, and then it just kind of falls to the wayside a bit, and he's shuffled out of the way after one son. But I think he's a very good actor, and he works better in season 8, I think.
Yeah, I mean, with Doggett especially, because they have ex-military stuff that they talk about, and what I really like about that...
The idiot gauge,
it is the idiot gauge, and that power play between Doggett and Kirsch really works really well, because it's like he wants to be pally with him, but he also knows that he's quite a powerful guy, Doggett. He's like a dog with a bone. Mm-hmm. So he's like a dog with a bone. So
he's dogged.
Yeah. So he's very dogged. Yeah. He's very dogged. But that, and then obviously Skinner's kind of alluding to the fact of like, you are a player now. You're a pawn in the game. And Doggett's not used to that. He's used to just being, I just want to investigate the thing I'm looking at. He's very, one mission focused. But at the same time, there's moments in this episode where the Kirsch and Doggett relationship he thinks is going to be quite pally, and that also helps in still going back into let's get behind Doggett, because there is a bit of my idiot gauge. There's something not quite right here.
Yeah, so that's a very good point, because I think what the episode does well is gradually try and turn you around on Doggett. Like I say, he's introduced, and Scully's quite hostile to him. And then we get the phone call. Scully calls him and says something about her phone being tapped, isn't it?
Yeah.
And like it seems like he knows nothing about it. Then you get the scene with Kirsch. So it's just gradually as you go along, you start to come around on him. I think it's handled quite deftly. But no, what I'm saying is I think Kirsch works well. Works well as kind of a bridge to Doggett. So we are reintroduced to Kirsch, who tells us about Doggett, then we meet Doggett. And I think there's some good stuff in this episode and in later episodes. We give some praise. I'm not that happy to see him again. I didn't like him much in the first place. He's even less cute than he was in season 6. You know what I mean? Like now. So I'm a bit less happy about him being reintroduced, is basically what I'm saying.
It's a means to an end, isn't it? Effectively.
Yeah,
that's all it is. So.
Yeah, but I think it's a testament to James Piggin Jr., his acting skills, where he clearly has, when he's in that meeting with Doggett and he's talking to Doggett, he's like a completely different person, like as a character, Kirsch. He's all friendly and buddy-buddy, and it's interesting to see the dynamic switch, and it just lets you know how much Kirsch plays people. And, he's not going to give Skinner and Scully an inch. But Doggett, he's like, yeah, man, you gotta get with the team and be a team player. And I do like how they set that up. So
yeah, I agree.
It's a good scene.
I had something I was going to ask you guys, if you don't mind, Sarah, which is like, Scully's theme, which we briefly touched on. Do you guys think it's used like too much? Because I think I've heard one or two people say maybe it is, because you get it several times. I think the main thing I was thinking was that back in the day, you would have watched this with commercials, and it kind of gets you back into the story. Whereas obviously these days you watch it on streaming or whatever, and you go straight through. So I think it's actually quite different experience in some ways. But what do you guys think?
I have kind of an abridged version of this, because I honestly thought, in thinking back to season 8, that it is used a bit too much. But in the episode itself, I didn't find it that jarring. So it's going to be interesting when I get into the later episodes, when I'm rewatching, whether or not that does start to jar me more, because season 8 just reminds me of Scully's theme so much. Now, is that just kind of a Mengele effect, that it's just like because it's like that kind of thing, or is it or is it the fact that it is used too much throughout the season? Because the first, as I say, 7 episodes, it's only really used in these 2. It's not really used again. So it's going to be interesting. But in this particular episode, I thought it was used okay.
Yeah, no, I like it.
I don't mind it, but it does very much remind me of Gladiator.
Right. I've got a story about that.
I can only, when I hear it, I only see, Scully walking through a field of wheat. And just, it's so deeply angsty. And it just, Gladiator is one of my favorite movies ever, ever, ever. I love that movie. And it is angsty. There's so much angst in Gladiator. So, and it came out in May 2000, and this came out November 2000. So I can't help but think that, contemporaneously, it was some of the influence was there. And it's not exactly the same, but just the low strings and the voice and the haunting voice of it all.
Yeah.
It sounds similar to me, but I know it's not the same.
No, I think it's a very good point, because when we went to X-Fest too, all of us were there. When we weren't up in Sarah's room drinking those root beer floats, when we were down doing the X-Files stuff, we went to see Mark Snow. I think Kurt, you were with me at the time.
I was there, yeah.
Right, so I think I'd missed his panel or something, and Chris Knowles had sent me a message saying, can you ask him what the inspiration was for Scully's theme? So I went up to see him at his table in the autograph area, whatever you call it, and I asked him about that, and he did mention Gladiator specifically. So I think that's a very astute observation, Sarah.
Vindicated. Yes.
Yeah, really nice guy as well.
He is. We
had a little
great.
chat, just a chat for a few minutes, but really nice guy.
Yeah, it was quiet time, was it? There must have been a talk on or something, because it was really quiet in the room.
Nobody
at the
else
time.
was around, were they? Yeah.
That makes me really excited to hear that, because I have always thought that, every time I hear it, I can only think of Gladiator. And I don't know if it's just that I'm a Gladiator fan, but yeah, I'm glad to know there is that association. And it is a beautiful piece of music. I mean, it's really haunting. And I think maybe part of the reason that it might feel like it's quote unquote too much, I feel that part of this episode is just so much of just watching Scully and like just the music and just Scully, and it does feel like it lasts a really long time, and I think some of it feels like it lasts maybe a little bit too much, but I think that's the point. We're there and she's missing Mulder, and that feels like it's forever because it feels like that to her. You know, it feels every minute without Mulder is just full of angsty angst.
Yeah,
So-
well, no, and you sort of see that, don't you, when she talks with Doggett eventually, because they go to Mulder's apartment, don't they? And I think I always take it as a bit of a callback to Little Green Men with the I came to feed the fish kind of dialogue.
That I love that scene because it just the way it characterizes Doggett, because it's just the way that, you know, he says I came to feed the fish for a start, which is great, but he's I think the line is something along the lines of Scully says you wouldn't know where to look, and then he turns around and goes middle drawer, and the
Done his
thing,
homework,
and it's
yeah.
just like, you know, this guy knows what he's doing. He's thorough, and as you say, Carl, with the sprinkling of stuff. I mean, it happens later on as well with the graveyard slab,
Gravestone,
which I want to discuss about that in a second. But it just goes to show just these little bits where there's like the not angsty, but the kind of like the butting heads together of that discussion, and you know, it's like the stuff like I know the answer, Agent Scully. All that kind of conversation really works well to like sort of have this conversation between Scully and Doggett the way that he is, and Scully's distrust of that. So
yeah, because he's got a very different kind of skepticism to what she has had over the years. Obviously, she's got a different kind of belief to what Mulder has had.
And what I like
So
about
it's not
Doggett, with that, it's, I mean, this is for a later episode, but in Vacation, for example, he sees a 10-year-old boy who's not aged in like 15, 20 years or whatever it may well be, but he's not bothered about that. He's bothered about the mission. He's not even contemplating what the weird phenomena is. He's
And
more
the implications of it.
Yeah, he's more concerned about the actual job, which is really
Well, I think
a nice like nuance.
Well, I think it works well in this context when it's so much of it is a procedural about the search for Mulder. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's not like the classic dichotomy between believer skeptic that makes this a great series. But in this context, I think it does the job. I think the limitations of it become a bit more evident when that recedes into the background. So I think some of those standalones where it's a bit, you know, sure kill, salvage, it's a bit more anonymous, isn't it? And you sort of realise that their pairing alone can't really get you through a run-of-the-mill episode. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when the focus is more on Mulder or more on Scully's, trying to reckon with his absence, I think it works better. Do you know what I mean, Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. The character stuff is really interesting to me, I think. And that's one of the things that I like about this episode in particular is that scene, you know, when they are in the apartment, and right before that when Scully is sorry. Cracking me up, Kurt.
Sorry, I tried to
Kurt's
be like
just,
really.
I know. Kurt's just reported the football score. So.
Yeah, to be fair, Kurt is just watching a football match while we're recording.
Yeah.
Lack of professionalism, you could argue.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in that scene where Scully goes back right before Doggett shows up and she is missing Mulder and she gets the shirt, I'm every time I see this, I'm bummed out that she doesn't smell it because, you know, smell is such a...
I actually did think that she was going to, because I don't know why she didn't.
Well, okay, I have to be shippery here for a minute. But this is, I feel like, kind of one of the things that I do find the most frustrating about season 8 is, you know, as a shipper, and I want to know what you guys think, because I know, Kurt, you're kind of agnostic on the shippery stuff, right? As a shipper, you know, we've known that Mulder and Scully care about each other deeply as partners, and then, you know, we wanted them to get together in a romantic way. And then up until this point, you know, kind of Chris Carter is like, no, they're platonic. And then all of a sudden, at the very end of season 7, it's like, oh, they're not platonic. We don't get to see it. We don't get to have any hint of this. All of a sudden, Scully's pregnant now, and we're meant to believe that they've had this relationship, taken to the next level in a physical way, and she is missing Mulder as a partner, and now romantically. And I feel cheated by that. I do.
In terms of what, though? I don't like, in terms of the fact that we can't, she only acknowledges it. Is that what you're saying when he's gone? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Are you saying, what, you haven't seen the 50 Shades of X-Files, or?
Well, yes. I feel like I do want to, I feel like we've missed out on that. And if you're going to make Scully, pregnant and have introduced this aspect, I wish that we could have led up to it a little bit more and acknowledged it at least throughout season 7 more.
Heavily implicit in season 7, though.
It is, but that's the thing, is it's implicit. Like, why not let them hold hands? Why not let them have those conversations? Like, I'm not saying they have to make out or, get physical on the screen.
Yeah, saying it.
But
they're very professional people.
I want to see this side of their characters, and I want to see that side of the relationship develop more
explicitly
on screen.
So I'm going to, as a slightly different tact on this, just because it was something that I thought about before, was the fact that we haven't got David Duchovny in the show for half of the season, and it seems like, for me, it falls in the middle. It kind of like there's a gap. There's a small gap in the show, and it seems to fall right through that gap of the fact that X-Files, to me, is about the story of, like I've said before, about the story of the actual events that happen, more than the romantic relationship, as I say, more the agnostic stuff. But at the same time, I really enjoy the Doggett Scully stuff, and obviously the manhunt for Mulder, so that I enjoy that story element of it. But it can't be like an NCIS or anything like that, where you've got an X-Files in Albuquerque, because it's about Mulder and Scully. So there's like it doesn't have the twin track approach of like, it's either a show about the X-Files or it's not a show about the X-Files. It's a show about Mulder and Scully, and there's a fall between the two. I personally, I'm quite happy with the way it is, but I can see your point.
I don't know, because I feel like we get far too much focus on their relationship in the previous couple of seasons, to be honest. I actually feel like they sort of take it a bit too far in season 6 and 7. I mean, we've had all things. We've had the Millennium Kiss. We've had how sort of flirty they get with one another in Thief. A bunch of those episodes.
Thief, which I remember now, Carl. I remember Thief now.
Yeah,
for those moments.
I think we've had a fair amount of focus on it, and even in this episode, the fact that, like you say, she picks up the shirt, she lays in his bed. It's all quite telling, isn't it? So it feels like enough to me. It feels fine.
The whole discussion with like needs to have that baby, and then she obviously does have that baby in Requiem.
I mean, honestly, like, me being me, it's never going to be enough. So, like, I think you guys make fair points.
Well, what I will say is the aspect that I don't really buy. I can sort of, I don't mind that stuff being a bit more background, or some of it being unseen. I find it much harder to accept the fact that Mulder has apparently been visiting doctors for a year. He's been dying, he's been getting his gravestone sorted out. That feels like much more of a stretch to me.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay, so my position on that is probably, I can get with the brain disease stuff. It's fine. I think the dying element of it is the bit where it's too far. I think if you could be hiding something from your partner, no one sees you the way that you see you, no matter who you are. Subjectively, you know your own mind. No one can actually get into that mind and know exactly what you're thinking. So, and things like that, some of the close loved ones you will keep things from if you have some elements of that. So I understand that and get that. As I say, I think for me the hardest thing to swallow is the fact that he was going to doctors because he was literally dying, because I think that would have come out. I think had it been like down the line he's going to have some significant issues and will eventually come to the end because of his infliction, then that would have been fine. But for 1 year not to even mention it at all. That's the thing for me. If it'd been less terminal, I think he could have got away with it more, but it does feel a bit too much.
It's not very good writing, I don't think. I think that first image of Mulder's gravestone works quite well on some level, just in the sense of the show sort of is having to acknowledge his at least temporary departure. I think in universe it works much less well. I think the theme of Mulder's got a secret is potentially quite an interesting one. Like you're saying, Kurt, the idea of can you ever truly know somebody else? That's kind of interesting, but I think they just needed to make it something a bit less massive. Do you know what I mean? Maybe if he just found out he was ill or something like that, just something that, like, I think, yeah, he's been dying for a year. It's kind of ridiculous, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about the tombstone because that bothers me. First of all, I understand why they used it as imagery. It's very,
Yeah.
It's literally heavy. It provokes the heavy feeling of the angst. But also, why? I presume, I don't know, it's the Mulder family headstone. And did they just, dig it up? And
it's Tina spelt wrong.
Oh, was it? Okay.
I think so.
I didn't see that part.
Yeah.
It jumped out at me this watch. I might be looking. I was meant to look at it. I completely forgot, but I'm pretty sure it's just Tena. I mean, I suppose that there's also that link to the person who died, who they related to at the end, don't they? It was 1961 to 2000. It's kind of like a homage to him. Plus, you've got the reflection in Ascension. Is it Ascension when Scully's gravestone's pulled after her abduction?
When Mulder sits with her mother.
But that made sense because they were actually at the place where they engraved the gravestone. They actually went to it. They didn't. I don't know. That always bothers me. I'm like, did they just dig it up and bring it? Why would they do that? I don't understand. Just take a picture.
So, for me, that scene, again, slightly different tact on it, is that what I really like about Within and Without is the way that it's portrayed. It starts off in daytime and it moves into the night, and the gravestone scene is really interesting because it strips away all the hustle and bustle of everything that's happening in the offices, and then distills it down to the three characters, and and then you have the kind of it's almost like the slideshow presentation mode of Doggett's been indoctrinated into that, and then but what they do with that then is once the episodes or the scene's finished, you get Doggett going to make a phone call and looking quite a long distance away, which still gives you that little bit of edge. It's still can we trust him? Can we not trust him? But I like the way it's indoctrinated into him with that conversation. So I get the conversation. I agree with the headstones a bit too much and on the nose. And speaking of on the nose, a couple of things while I remember. So the kind of the speeches I was talking about, all the wording, was Scully's task force leader. And using words like that, it's and the way that Scully pushes it. And then at the very beginning in the office, when it's it's pertinent to the manhunt. The manhunt for who? But even them in the episode go, are you being serious? It's you're in Mulder's office, going through Mulder's and Scully's stuff, and you're asking, what you doing? Who you looking for? Those things a bit on the nose. It's it's a bit, they're a bit jarring. But anyway, carry on with the gravestone stuff.
No, I agree. I think that scene is, I guess in Scully's mind, she's so sure that she knows what happened already that she is disoriented by that. Why are you looking for Mulder here? What manhunt? We already know what happened to him. He's been abducted by aliens. But she can't say that obviously.
Yeah.
But
I always think of the final scene in season 9 when it's who did this? Who authorized this? When Doggett's rolling up the poster, who did this? Who authorized this? It's write it better.
I'll tell you the moment I like here is when it's Scully, Skinner, and Doggett, and Skinner is saying, "I know exactly what happened out there," and instead of hearing him say what he thinks happened, you get a flashback to what we see in Requiem. But then when it comes back and Doggett's just kind of shocked into silence kind of thing. It just makes you wonder exactly what Skinner said, Yeah.
I made that note. I wanted to talk about that. I'm glad you brought it up because that drives me bonkers. I'm knowing Skinner and who he is as a character, I want to know exactly what he said there and how much he said. I don't need to be reminded of what happened to Mulder. I think did that just to
Or maybe
be like,
they felt that people did. Maybe they felt like some audience members needed to see that again. But
right?
We had it previously on the X-Files bit at the beginning.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but yeah.
I think you're right that they felt like, it's like, well, this we need to remind people, but that bothers me so much because I want to know exactly, what Skinner was thinking and saying there, and just how much he revealed, because I think it's pivotal to his character.
Oh, yeah. Or would hearing him say it though have made it seem a bit too silly or something? Maybe they filmed it and thought that, or it's hard to know.
Well, yeah, and I think it might have been too much, maybe, but like Kurt said, write it better. Mitch Pileggi could have definitely pulled that off, or Scully didn't. She could have stopped him right before he said too much, or.
For me, it's more because the focus is on Doggett than it is on Skinner. Because again, it goes, well, why would I report it? It's not going to do me any good. It's not going to help me find Mulder. So it again backs up Doggett isn't going to throw you under the bus, because he's literally said it. Part of Skinner's story through this is like him saying, and I think it's a really important moment, is when Skinner's saying they can hang me with a lie too. So he's saying, whichever way he goes, it's a really difficult decision to make. Mm-hmm. And Scully's saying, don't do it. Skinner eventually does do it, but does it in front of Doggett, and Doggett's the one that goes.
It doesn't. Sort of
it's not gonna. Yeah. It doesn't. It's not gonna affect what I'm doing, because I'm again laser focused on the mission. And Doggett's way of looking at that is that he doesn't believe in all of this mumbo jumbo. It's not going to do him any good. So why would I do that? Whereas in the past, X-Files would have gone, we've got something on you. We're going to use that in the future. And they still have that element. There's still, straight after that, as I say, he has that phone call. And they still have a little wink to it, like, can we quite trust him? But they do it enough to give you that impression that Doggett's going to be a good guy.
Like you say, Kurt, the focus gradually going on to Doggett, I think, is done really well. Like I said, the fact that first of all you see him with Scully, then Scully calls him. You're about 20 minutes into the episode before you see Doggett not in the context of Scully, when you see Doggett and Kirsch together. Then you get the scene with Scully and Doggett in Mulder's apartment, then this stuff. And I think what's interesting then is in the final act of the episode, it actually begins with Doggett. You get a quick slow-mo shot of Doggett. Now, all the other after the act breaks, it goes to Scully and Scully's theme. But by the end of the episode, that sort of falls away, and we're sort of with Doggett a bit more. So I think it's handled very astutely, over the course of the 45 minutes here. Also, the fact that when Scully makes the breakthrough about Gibson Praise, you're actually cross-cutting at that point with Doggett doing his thing, aren't you? And he gets the file at the same moment she talks about it. So I just like that. How that's handled.
So who gives him the file? Is it Kirsch? Is it?
I was going to ask you, because I haven't been back and watched the second part yet. Is it establishing without? No, I haven't seen it.
Not really. Skinner basically says in without that you're the pawn. You're a pawn in the game. How did you find out about Gibson Praise? You're being used. So, but he doesn't say who actually handed the file over. Now, this is after the bounty hunter's been into the offices and cleared everything out. So for me, it feels like it's the bounty hunter that's done it, with like a longer game of actually maybe getting Doggett into that, or it's a weird one. It's difficult to like sort of pass who would actually do it. Yeah,
maybe it was Gibson Praise.
Gibson
no,
Praise.
He was at school.
Yeah.
He was at school eyeing up that girl, wasn't he? I think it's very good. One moment I really like in this episode is, so Scully has that, I take it as a vision of what's happening to Mulder on the ship. And then when she wakes up and she's in the car with Skinner. But then when you go to the exterior shots and you sort of see they're in the desert and all of that, I think that works really well, because the first 35 minutes of this episode are quite intimate and contained, aren't they? And then all of a sudden, right at the end, the canvas really expands and we've got these like sweeping vistas. And I like that. I like the sort of the feel of that stuff at the end,
Yeah, it's quite propulsive, isn't it? The as you say, the wide shot, which is kind of very kind of reflective on Fight the Future, and it zooms over to the helicopter. Doggett likes a helicopter, it seems. He just likes to use helicopters. And that sweeping shot, really, really nice, really nice. And as you say, the propulsion kind of picks up a little bit here, and as you say, that Doggett and Scully kind of like split up at this point. It's kind of like a a two story thing with Skinner and Scully and Doggett and the team.
Yeah, well, they both arrive at
Yeah.
just about the same time at the school, don't they? And Gibson's made a run for
which
it.
again is fascinating. I really like, because we're so used to seeing Mulder and Scully in a lot of the stories. It's always about them chasing something, whereas like Doggett has a full team behind him. Yeah, and it's fascinating seeing that kind of like, you know, I've got a mission statement here. I'm like boots on the ground kind of thing, and I find that really interesting. A really nice juxtaposition with Skinner and Scully, what we'd normally see of being quite insular and quite like investigative, and you've got this wide open kind of multiple FBI agents like sweeping and doing all that kind of thing. It really is a nice juxtaposition.
Yeah, and it's very cinematic as well. Like that moment when Mulder has led Gibson, well, not Mulder, but the bounty hunter posing as Mulder has led Gibson away, and you get like this aerial shot that like swoops up over the crest and picks them out as they come towards the edge of the cliff. I think it's just very cinematic, I suppose, is the obvious word, isn't it? Towards the end of the episode there. Good cliffhanger, I think, as well.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that from the beginning of the episode, we start so slow and quiet and it's just Scully. And then at the end of the episode, it's almost like a race to see who's going to get there first. And I think it adds a lot of attention and excitement towards the end of the episode. And I like that about it. It really picks up the pace quite a bit. And then, literal cliffhanger.
Well, I think, again, quite clever, just in the sense that naturally I think we sort of want Mulder to return. We probably know he's going to be in a certain amount of episodes. So then I think seasoned X-Files watchers can pick up just from the look on his face that it's not really Mulder, probably. But to have him apparently return in the context of him seeming like a bit of a threat is an interesting note to finish on, isn't it? I suppose you can sort of think back to things like Colony and sort of see a bit of a comparison, can't you? But I think in this context, it works pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it but I don't know about you guys, but every time I see his face, I'm like, that doesn't look like David Duchovny at all. He looks very different.
Yeah,
so, yeah. And I think it's a nice segue into the next episode. It just drives you right in, propels you on to the next episode. So, yeah, I think it's a good finale for this. A good ending.
Agreed. No, I agree. I think it's good.
Yep. There any other things you want to talk about?
I do. I think we've missed a vital character in this episode.
Agent Crane.
No, well, Crane is one we need to talk about. No, but it's me, your landlord. We've missed the landlord. How can we miss the landlord?
He's great.
I think that's a good point. I think that's an interesting thing in relation to what we were saying earlier, that you get that sort of scene where she's going through the hallway and it's all very tense and dramatic, and not much has actually happened there to advance the plot, but you get a couple of minutes where you're feeling fearful for Scully and you're right there with her, and it's kind of diffused by the landlord's appearance, isn't it? And obviously he is supposedly seen Mulder, so it's quite a good little scene, I think. Yeah, I agree.
It is. Yeah, good times.
He's a lovely guy. He's fixing the area in that weather. I mean,
yeah, he's dedicated.
I think he could join aboard the Davy train personally. I think
it's probably the most unbelievable thing in all of the X-Files, having a conscientious landlord. Oh, sorry, that's my. I got to admit, I'm prejudiced against landlords. I've had some bad experiences. But yeah.
Well, I think.
Sorry to any landlords out there if you are diligent and ethical.
There are probably maybe one or two.
I'm sure some are.
Yeah, so I mean, I think for me, as I said about the wiping the slate clean thing, the bringing it into the episode as such of like the computers are physically being taken away, that they're getting rid of all the abductees and stuff like that. It is literally starting a new mythology, even though it's an interesting concept to do that, and I think it works relatively well at this point in the mythology work. I think that does a good job there. But other than that, I don't think there's anything else that's jumping out at me in my notes that I would like to talk about, really. No,
well, like I said, it's quite a sparse piece, really, in a lot of ways, because you get so much slow-mo and all of that. So I feel like we've probably covered the main beats here, to be honest.
Yeah, same. All right. Well, let's go over to our mailbag and see what we've got from our friends in the basement. All right, well, Chris Knowles says, a lot going on behind the scenes. Gillian called Robert Patrick the Energizer Bunny, and everyone seems to agree his energy and focus were contagious. Kim Manners said Robert Patrick brought a real breath of fresh air to a show a lot of people inside and outside the 1013 offices thought was getting very stale. Chris Carter was solely focused on the X-Files this season. John Gilnitz got put in charge of the Lone Gunmen, and the difference in his writing, particularly the dialogue, is instantly noticeable in this episode. The writers and producers were refreshed by having new stories to tell and new problems to solve. Frank, who was quietly reluctant about doing an 8th season, said it was his favorite season to write for. And you can clearly tell that the show got a fresh financial infusion. The widescreen production values from the Vancouver era that got lost in the troubled 7th season were back. It was exactly what I and a lot of other fans were hoping for. Old school, back to basics X-Files.
I think that matches my feelings fairly well, especially when he talks about Robert Patrick bringing a bit of a new impetus or a new energy, because that was my feeling, is like I was not at the time particularly enthralled by season 7, but I was really into season 8 from episode 1, because I think I just liked the way it was... I liked Robert Patrick, and I liked the way things had been shaken up a bit. So, yeah, I would go along with Chris there, to be honest.
Yeah, I got nothing really to add. I absolutely agree. That's very similar to what I would think as well. Season 7, even from going through it with the X-Cast last year, the fact that I'm coming into this season and I personally feel more energized. So it's it definitely is for me, and it's telling going into the season as well. So yeah, I agree with a lot of what he says.
Yeah, I don't know that I disagree, but I don't feel that energy yet. I'm still waiting.
No, it's
waiting
very
for
subjective,
it.
I think.
Yeah. All right, AJ Black. Who's that? I don't know. Some guy. One of the best season premieres the show did for my money. There's a vibrancy and a sense of dramatic stakes to the storytelling we haven't seen in quite some time. Mulder's absence takes the show into a whole new realm, and you can see how much Gillian enjoys the meat on the dramatic bone she's given. Robert Patrick is immediately engaging. His introductory scene is superbly smart and antagonistic. And while the episode is structurally all set up, it cracks along and builds to a cliffhanger that feels genuinely uncanny. An indicator of what season 8 will be at large. Top stuff.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to what Tony says there, but again, I feel quite similarly. I did have something I wanted to ask you, Sarah, because on Polo you'd said something about Doggett's accent and not being able to get on board with that. So what are you saying exactly?
Oh no, it's just so strongly like a New York cop accent, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, I don't know.
I mean, he's from Georgia, isn't he?
Well, he was born in Georgia, but worked in New York, and has also spent some time in Lebanon, according to that computer screen we see. So
yeah, I don't know. I think it's just a little bit heavy on the New York cop stuff. Like, he's just very obviously like the New York cop, and I'm gonna
trying to emphasize that he's a bit of a different character to what we've had before, probably.
Yeah,
I do like the fact that Doggett came into the FBI quite late on, like 1995. Mm-hmm. So it's after the X-Files is already well underway, rather than being like he's been in criminal, the investigating department for, since the late 80s or something like that. It's nice that, you've got that beat cop aspect to him.
Yeah, and I think that really shows throughout, the episode in the season that he is not originally an FBI agent. He didn't come to the Bureau from, starting out at Quantico and then going through the whole thing. He actually has investigative experience outside the Bureau and his own methods. And I do like that aspect. I mean, I do appreciate that he is a New York detective. He's got that background as a character.
They make quite good use of it early on. I mean, in Patience, for example, when Scully's really ready to give up because he can't make that leap, it's actually the good old cop work that actually helps move the story on.
Right.
So I think as a character base, but rather than just the accent, I think it works really well.
Okay, Paige says, "What a great entry for Robert Patrick. It really, really works." Ana Gomez says, "Scully's theme. I love it and miss it. I wish they brought it back, but I guess it doesn't fit the new style of the show." I guess is she talking about 10 and 11 probably.
I guess, probably, yeah. She probably would have liked to have heard it in the revival, I assume.
Yeah. Ellie Jean says, I love the scene with Skinner where he retells the story of Mulder's abduction and Scully coaxes him down. Now he knows what it's like to sit on the other side of the table, and you can see him finally understand. It's also sad to see Scully know what's just happened to his credibility. Scully's phone call to her mum is heartbreaking. This episode has so many quiet, delicate moments to underpin the action.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think it does that well, to be fair. I also like the scene where Scully and Skinner talk quite early on, and he's like going to go in and reveal the truth, and she's like, what good would that do Mulder? I think that's good. In addition to that later scene where he says whatever he says when Doggett's there. So yeah, there are some good Skinner moments here.
I really do like that scene because it shows just how traumatized Scully has been by this whole experience of the X-Files and just how distrustful she now is of, the whole system and how things are going. And she knows from experience, like, hey, they're going to use this against you. And she doesn't want that for Skinner. And I think at this point she kind of is on board and knows that, like, he's their ally at this point.
I think that the Skinner thing's interesting from perspective of that you've got to have him again on the side. Bearing in mind what he's been going through in season 6 and 7. And I think this episode does a good job of just ignoring everything that's gone on before, just for now, just to say that Skinner's seen it, he knows he's there, he's got Scully's back, because of that will have its own narrative problems, because you've got Skinner was very much a yes guy to Scully. It's very kind of like, well, I saw it, yeah, I know you saw it, kind of thing, and that's why you need the antagonism of Doggett. But Skinner works really well in these 2 episodes in that just kind of like just helping that like little almost like the wave of bringing Skinner in and using him as a recognised noble character. And of course he's on the credits, isn't he, as well? So yeah. So having that as a little cushion to the blow, I think works quite well.
Well, I like that this is kind of a pivotal moment for his character arc, because up until Requiem, essentially, he's been on the line. He's been treading that line so carefully all this time and trying to help Mulder and Scully as much as he can when he can. But he's been very, very careful. And then the moment that he sees Mulder get abducted, he can't deny it anymore, and he ends up way over on this other side of the line where, he's had all of this time, he's had all of these personal experiences, in Vietnam and all of that. And then, later in Kitten, we get more of his background where he's saying, he didn't just have the one experience that he taught, but more experiences with, bureaucracy and all of that, and that informed how he played things up until now. But now he is just fed up and he can't do it anymore. And I really enjoy that arc and seeing that, how he's willing to, play the game now and not play the game, anymore. He can't sell out Mulder. He just is fed up.
Yeah, no, I think he gets some good stuff this season, to be sure.
Yeah.
I think like later on, is it Via Negativa, isn't it, Kurt, where he's teamed up with Doggett? That works pretty well from what I recall.
Yeah.
So there's stuff like that to look forward to this season, yeah.
Surprise, surprise, just for people's knowledge, Chris Knowles is on that one.
I think that'd be good, because it's got all the abstract, sort of surrealistic imagery, isn't it?
Really looking forward to speaking to him about
You're
that.
hosting that one, aren't you, Kurt? Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
Yeah, guys, what have we got coming up this season? Good stuff, right?
Well, I wouldn't go that far. We've got obviously Without. You've already recorded that with Darren, haven't you, Sarah?
Mm-hmm.
Please tell me you said how on earth that Scully doesn't get infected by the green stuff after she shoots it. No
spoilers, but
no spoilers.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, we've got I'm doing Patience. I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully with Christopher Pilbeam. Then it's me, you, and Tony, isn't it, for Roadrunners? Sarah, recording that fairly soon. It's going to be like me and Tony are going to be like 10 out of 10, and you're going to be like naysayer of the bunch, I think. Lots of stuff. I think some really good discussions I'm sure we'll come up with. So I think it's going to be a good year.
Yeah, it is. It is. Looking forward to it. Where can we find you online, Carl?
I'm on Twitter at CKJ Sweeney. I haven't been using it as regularly recently as I have in the past, but it just kind of ebbs and flows a bit with me with Twitter. I'm also in the basement, so yeah, I think now that these episodes are coming out, hopefully we'll get some good season 8 discussion going. Those are the main places, really.
Kurt?
Yep, so you can find me on Twitter at rmuldrake. It's RMULDRAKE. As I mentioned before, I've been really busy, so I'm currently on the Red Dwarf podcast, Shipwrecked and Comatose. Find that at Red Dwarf Pod. Soon, at time of recording, Star Trek Picard Season 2 will be airing, so I'll be on that, the Make It So podcast, and you can find that at Jean-Luc Podard. And my my most recent venture is with Tony himself, on the Yellow Jackets podcast, which has been incredible. I'm just about to record this afternoon, episode 3 of that, so that's good fun. Very kind of lost Twin Peaks X-File vibes. X-File gets mentioned in the show as well at some points. Cathy tweeted out the other week actually about a little mention in the first episode of a little quote. So it's if you haven't seen Yellow Jackets, I would strongly suggest watching that, and you can find that on Twitter at Yellow Jacket Pod. That's the best place to find that, and that's me, Tony, and Matt Latham.
Excellent stuff. You can find the Xcast around the interwebs. We're over on Facebook at the Xcast Basement, the Xcast. No, never can get it right. Never can get it right. The X-Files Basement, the Xcast Fancast Podcast Fan Group. It's been a minute,
Close
you
enough.
guys. Yeah, just like throw in Xcast and Basement and you'll find it. It's on there. You can find us on Twitter at the X_cast, and over on Instagram, we're going to be the Xcast Pod. And you can find me, Sarah L. Blair, on Twitter, and author.sarah.blair on Instagram. And yeah, good times. Did you, this episode's, I totally forgot. This episode's meant to be aired on my birthday, so.
Happy birthday.
Exciting.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. Happy early birthday. We're
This
recording
is our
this
gift to
months
you.
in advance. Yeah.
We've joined you for this.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Feels so
You'll
special.
always have this to look back on future birthdays. Memory.
Yes. All right. So I think that about wraps things up for us this time. Heading into season 8. I'm looking forward to it, you guys. But, until next time, always remember, everyone, trust no one.
Or John Doggett. Trust John Doggett. It's fine.
Trust Skinner.
Trust Skinner. Trust John Doggett.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
Academy Watch, a prestige film podcast.
A lot of these other characters that are not human have these bizarre names, non-Anglo names. And then we have Paul.
I mean, I kind of wanted a Brian or a Gary to rock up next to him as well.
Yeah, like a Gary, like a real Scouse guy from.
I was about to do a Scouse accent, but then I thought better of it.
Yeah, let's leave the Scouse. We've already offended the Pauls. Let's leave the Garys alone.
Pick a disc.
Everyone was sort of caught up in the cowboyness of the post 9/11 world. Like to an extent, in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, George W. Bush basically took on the role of John Wayne. He was like, I'm going to find them and I'm going to catch them and I'm going to put them to justice, that sort of thing. And I think for a long while that had kind of been accepted, and that was, okay, you can lead us forward, you know what you're doing. And then, some other things began happening and other wheels started turning, and that's where I think this album managed to land. Was there were a load of people that were thinking about, is this right? Should we be doing this? And it kind of validated that school of thought because it said it in such an eloquent way, and it's very, very pointed at, its administrations and its message of anti-war, not necessarily anti-this war, but anti-all wars.
right in the childhood.
There's other boy bands include the likes of McFly. McFly's a big one.
I remember McFly.
McFly, Busted.
McFly was shit busted.
Oh, that's a controversial.
I could name 5 or 8. Well, 3 or 4.
Here we go, because I'm a big Busted and McFly.
I could name
fan.
3 or 4 Busted songs. I could name you no McFly songs.
Name me some Busted.
Year 3000. Yeah. Shit me, I'm sure I know more than Year 3000.
Glad I crashed the wedding.
Yeah, that one.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network. The Xcast and X-Files podcast was created by Tony Black and is produced and hosted by Carl Sweeney, Sarah Blair and Kurt North.
You can find the podcast on Twitter at the X_cast, on Facebook by typing in the Xcast, and in our group, X-Files Basement, the Xcast podcast fan group, and on Instagram at the Xcast pod.
Don't forget, you can support the show by becoming a member on Patreon. Our patrons get early access to episodes, behind-the-scenes chats with our hosts and a thriving community of X-Files, and other premium interviews and specials. To find out more and subscribe, you can go to patreon.com/thexcast. That's patreon.com/thexcast.
We are also part of the We Made This podcast network, full of popular culture shows, including our Millennium series, The Time Is Now. You can find all of our shows at our website, wemadethispod.com, or via Twitter at wemadethispod.
Thanks for listening and keep watching the skies.